So last week, there was a story that came out that went under the radar about plans to build a new $95 million police academy on the west side of Chicago in West Garfield Park, which is 96% black and where the number of households living below the poverty line is 40.3%. Okay, now, of course, the arguments you're going to hear in favor of this decision, especially on the right, will be based on West Garfield Park's crime rate, which is one of the highest in the city. It might actually be the highest. But let me read this article from the Chicago Tribune and give you my opinion on this. This is from the article. Chance the Rapper brought his star-powered activism to City Hall on Wednesday, speaking out against Mayor Rahm Emanuel's plan to spend $95 million on a new police training academy in West Garfield Park. The Grammy-winning Southside rap artist delivered a casual speech during the public comment portion of the city council meeting. Down in the lobby, he huddled with students there to protest the school closing. And he took to social media, making hashtag #NoCopAcademy the top trending topic on Twitter in Chicago for hours. What impact did all of this have on aldermen? They voted 48-1, 48 in favor, 1 against, to pay $10 million for 30 acres of vacant land for the academy. Emanuel defended the project at his post-meeting news conference. Quote, all of the aldermen on the west side voted for this because they understand they have felt forgotten from the type of public investments that can spur economic growth, end quote, Emanuel said. And then, quote, it will have its own value of safety for the entire city. It will have its own value of safety to the west side, and it will be an investment in the kind of economic activity we want to see, end quote. Later in the article, it says the new academy would be in the ward of Alderman Emma Mitz, who said it would provide a way for the department to try to fix some of the training inadequacies the U.S. Justice Department pointed out in a scathing January report detailing a pattern of constitutional violations by police against residents. The training center also could be an anchor for economic development and give residents a sense of safety in a part of the city that has been beset by poverty and violence for decades, Mitch said this week, noting that the site has been vacant for more than 40 years. So let me stop there for a moment. The reason why I wanted to do a video about this story is because it hits on a problem. That problem is the clear and obvious shortcoming in looking at police training as the primary solution to the problem of state violence. How is pumping $95 million into a new police academy going to prevent another Laquan McDonald cover-up? I doubt any of the 48 aldermen who voted for this measure has the answer to that question, because the reason McDonald was killed had nothing to do with poor training. It had everything to do with the lack of proper accountability measures and the disregard for black life. I see this argument being made on the left a lot. People want so badly to attribute this problem of state violence to a training issue in an effort to play down the racial component of state violence. Even though we already know the stats on black people and the problematic relationship we have with the criminal and justice system historically and currently, we already know they target black communities under the guise of safety. Then when you read things like the DOJ report for Chicago, you see all of the constitutional violations that go on underneath the surface, where cops are literally being allowed to break the law and nothing gets done about it. It's a cover-up from head to toe, completely state-sponsored and media ignored. This is not to mention blatantly illegal things like Holman Square, which was a literal black site that the CPD operated, where 3,500 black locals were interrogated without legal representation. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, that story didn't even break until some white folks got caught up in it. Okay, I'm glad Chance the Rapper has used his prestige and access to shed light on what's going on in Chicago. You know, instead of building new schools with that money, they're shutting down schools in predominantly black and brown areas. And they're trying to bus a bunch of students to schools that, at least on paper, are performing better, but you're adding more stress onto that system. You're adding more stress onto that school, and you're making it harder for the students that are at those other schools to excel, because now there's an overcrowding issue. And then they're trying to push charter schools as well on top of closing public schools. They're not using that $95 million to lower the black unemployment rate, which likely plays a significant role in crime in the city, and likely is probably putting it mildly. Illinois had the largest black unemployment rate in America in 2016 at 12.7%, and that number is conservative. There is a major economic crisis that's going on in Chicago that goes completely unmentioned. Everyone wants to talk about the crime and not the underlying factors that increase the crime rate, like the lack of jobs and upward mobility. You see the same relationship between poverty and crime in cities like Baltimore, where I'm from. But what's the response from Rahm Emanuel and local politicians? More police. They're going to arrest their way to lower crime rates. To them, it's better to keep people terrorized and surveilled than actually doing things that'll make lives better. They try to spin in some sort of economic angle to the construction of this police academy. Trust me, the only people who will benefit financially from this will be the cops and the politicians. The people of Chicago won't see a dime from this at all. So all of this talk about that, like building a police station is going to spur economic growth. Okay, show me the receipts for that. Show me the studies that back that up. Show me what's going to be built on top of the police academy that's going to help lower the unemployment rate in that city. We'll wait for that. I don't think it's coming, but I'm going to wait. Now, there's one last quote from the article that I wanted to read before ending the video. Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa of the 35th District, who cast the lone vote against spending the money, contended that police training wasn't going to solve the problems highlighted by the Justice Department report, which is what I said a second ago. So one guy clearly gets it. That probe was triggered, and this is continuing in the article. That probe was triggered by the November 2015 release of a police dash cam video showing African-American teen Laquan McDonald being shot 16 times by a white police officer who has since been charged with murder. The officer didn't need more training to know what he was doing was wrong, but, quote, to be held accountable for his previous misdeeds, Ramirez Rosa said. What he needed was the mental health to deal with the racism and the hatred that he felt in his heart. And Laquan McDonald, who was out that night with a knife slashing tires, what he needed was mental health services. End quote. Bingo. This alderman, like I said a second ago, this alderman seems to get it. So-called better training without accountability, okay, will not work. We have an accountability issue within criminal justice because we have a biased and unjust system. Throwing money at law enforcement and giving them shiny new toys to use against us is not addressing the problem. It's perhaps potentially making the problem worse. It's what the city of Chicago is doing because the DOJ has low standards and gives cities like Chicago get out of jail free cards so they don't have to investigate 25% or more of the force for violating the constitutional rights of Black Americans. So they get to be allowed to just sweep that under the rug. Yeah, we're going to expose constitutional violations against Black people and the blatant violation of the Constitution. But, you know, if you just do X, Y, and Z, build some new academies, say you're doing better, yada, 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 you know, we won't press further. We'll just let you off the hook. That's basically what the DOJ does all the time, which is why those reports, you know, from Ferguson, Baltimore, Chicago, those reports are necessary because they provide a very strong source in terms of if you're talking about these issues. You know, no one's going to be able to really deny what's in a DOJ report, right? After they've investigated something for, you know, over a year or however long they do it. So it helps shed light on problems in the community, but there's traditionally and always a lack of follow-up. with those reports. Because like I said, they give local police departments get out of jail free cards. They basically just give them slaps on the wrist. So share this video and let everyone know what's going on. This isn't the worst story in the world, but at the same time, it just goes to show you how a lot of these establishment leaders, a lot of these establishment Democrats like Rahm Emanuel, and the people who kiss up to establishment Democrats at the local, state, and federal level don't address these problems. They don't really get at the heart of what these problems are or what's causing these problems. Okay, throwing money at state violence and thinking that's going to solve the issue of state violence is naive at best.